What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
Talent called Christie, 1921 to 1924. In the early 20th century, another gifted American engineer, inventor, designer, and auto racer, John Walter Christie, assembled front-wheel drive, transverse engine fast cars and two-wheel tractors for fire pumper trucks. What came next was even more interesting. In the early 1920s, Christie built 12 3- and 4-axle 90-horsepower floating armored vehicles of various designs, with crews and ammunition for artillery systems of caliber from 75 to 155 millimeters. The front non-driving wheels were steerable, and propellers were used for water travel. Machines on sponge tires weighed 6 to 8 tons, on wheels developed speed of 48 kilometers per hour, afloat 12 kilometers per hour. All of them turned out to be bulky, impractical, useless, and Christie switched to tanks. Floating Kübelwagen, 1941 to 1944. We have already told about land staff cars WWII of the German company Volkswagen. It is now time to talk about the lesser-known light floating amphibians. Now it is time to tell about the less-known light floating amphibious army vehicles. In the summer of 1941, 6 examples of Volkswagen 128, 4x4, floating vehicles with 4-seat bodies without doors, resembling a bathtub, on wheels, were tested and presented to the Wehrmacht. A 25-horsepower, 1.1 horsepower opposite engine was housed in a sealed rear compartment. A 4-speed gearbox with auxiliary gearbox and differential locking mechanisms worked in combination with it. All wheels had independent torsion bar suspensions with swinging axles. On the lid of the rear wall of the body were mounted prototype versions of mechanisms for tilting the propellers up and drive of their variants. The assembled 30 copies were delivered to sapper units, but in practice they turned out to be bulky, unstable, and unsuitable for military use. In March 1942, modernized versions of the Volkswagen 166, 4x4, were presented, in which most of the changes and improvements were reduced to the introduction of more compact vehicle elements, improved weight, and dimensional data. The main achievement was considered to be the reduction of wheelbase from 2.4 to exactly 2 meters, the length of the cars by 375 millimeters, and the reduction of both tracks. The restored Volkswagen 166 amphibious vehicles in configuration and with coloring for the Wehrmacht, top, and the Air Force. The updated vehicle received a compact displacement body with a rounded egg-shaped rear end in the engine compartment lid. On the rear wall of the body on the hinged bracket was located the same 3-blade propeller with a diameter of 330 millimeters. When fixed in the lower position, the propeller was driven directly from the engine crankshaft through a clutch and triple chain drive. When traveling on land, the propeller was lifted up and secured to the body with leather straps. Exhaust gases flowed through grills in the upper part of the engine compartment into a massive cylindrical muffler with replaceable filler, and a thin long dipstick was used to measure the oil level in the engine. Among the disadvantages of the trucks were cramped body, large draft of the hull, inability to move on high waves and low speed afloat with a load. At the end of 1942, the production of the most famous German amphibians VW166 began at the plant in Wolfsburg. Until October 1944, they were built in the amount of 14.3 thousand vehicles. Pro-Fascist Triple, 1937 to 1944. Hauptsturmführer Hans Triple, an active member of the National Socialist movement and captain of the SA assault squads, was the only German designer who devoted his life to building small amphibians, most of which remained on the battlefields. His machines served in the SS forces, the Navy, and TOTS paramilitary construction units. Before the war, Triple designed and built prototypes of the SG-6, 4x4, amphibious vehicle with an engine from a 38-horsepower Adler Trumpf passenger car, open 5-seat bodies with recessed headlights and short, airtight doors. In 1938, the more advanced SG-638 series was presented, which used an overhead valve 55-horsepower engine from the Opel Kapitten passenger car with a 4-speed gearbox, independent suspension of all wheels and 18-inch tires. In January 1941, during the occupation of France, a small company Triple Work was formed in the Saarland town of Homburg, which was later transferred to the famous Bugatti company in Molsheim. Distinctive features of Triple's work were peripheral onboard structures against high waves, the middle arrangement of one or two, radiators between the engines and the saloon, four-seat cargo passenger vehicles with floating trailers, and extended versions of the Pioneer to carry up to 16 soldiers and armament. Since 1941, the Triple Factory produced a modest amphibian SG-6A41, in which the nose part was equipped with units from Opel, and self-locking differentials, hydraulic brakes, and folding propellers with a diameter of 380 mm were moved to the aft hull recess. On the highway, the machine could reach a speed of 72 km per hour, afloat, 12 to 13 km per hour. Until 1944, Triple assembled a total of about 800 military amphibians of the SG-6 series, under the beautiful name Aqua Cheetah, 1941 to 1943. In the early 40s under the beautiful name Aqua Cheetah, Sea Cheetah, for some time hidden American light reconnaissance amphibian, which in history was considered to be an ideological prototype of military all-wheel drive vehicles. Ford GPA inventor Roger Hofheinz presented his unusual vehicle at military trials in May 1941. The six-seat Aqua Cheetah was equipped with an automobile engine mounted in the center of the displacement hull, a small propeller, individual chain-driven wheels and single-spring suspensions. To expand this work, the Amphibian Car Co. was formed, where they assembled a promising Model XAC2 with a rear-mounted 99-horsepower Dodge engine, gearboxes, and axles from American all-terrain vehicles, as well as drums for self-pulling vehicles to the shore. In 1943, on the HAC3 variant were used aggregates from Dodge T215 all-terrain vehicles. In total, up to 12 amphibians were built. Waterfowl Trifles, Dutch DF since its birth in 1932, the Dutch Van Doorn Aanhangwagen Fabriek, DAF, did not deal with automobiles, but was characterized by the production of various gimbals and light jeeps to them, It was not until 1939 that its own military vehicle appeared. It was a light vehicle DAF MS-139, 4x4, with 4 working wheels and 2 control posts. Citroën 7CV engine of 48 horsepower and gearbox were placed transversely in the center of the chassis, and in the front and back to each other, there were 2 seats. The strange machine could be driven in front or in reverse at speeds of up to 70 km per hour. Waterborne trivia: the British Hexanaut in 1940, the British firm Humber built 3 unusual Hexanaut 6x6 compact amphibious landing vehicles with onboard turning systems. Each was equipped with 2 sets of 3 large diameter drive wheels mounted on both sides of the vehicle. 2 Hillman 14 HP engines, each driving one side of the vehicle, were used to steer the vehicle by braking the wheels of one or the other track. At 3.4 meters long, the Hexanaut was only 1.3 meters wide, but weighed about 3 tons. The machines turned out to be too complicated and heavy. They were not put into production and never landed from airplanes. British heavy amphibians Terrapin, 1943 to 1944. In 1942, the Thornycroft Company began development of wheeled 4-ton military amphibians. The prototype Terrapin MKI, 8x8, appeared in June 43, and in July production was transferred to Morris Commercial. At the same time, it was called the world's first heavy production floating vehicle, which surpassed the American 2.5-ton amphibians. GMC DUKW 353, the Thornycroft Terrapin MKI heavy amphibious vehicles, manufactured by Morris Commercial. The center section of the welded body housed 285 horsepower Ford the 5th 8 engines, 2 onboard transmissions, main worm gears at each wheel, and a rudimentary rubber suspension. The elevated setup of the front and rear pairs of drive wheels was put to work only on rough terrain and coastal roads. On highways, it moved on 4 middle wheels and maneuvered sideways. Afloat propulsion was provided by 2 propellers. The main disadvantage of the Terrapin was its instability afloat, so in November 1944 one prototype 5-ton Terrapin MKII was built. With a front-mounted engine, tire pressure control and a recovery crane for reloading artillery systems up to 57 mm caliber. German 8-legged floating amphibious vehicles, 1940 to 1942. Secret work on multi-axle trucks in Germany was carried out from the mid-1920s as part of the creation of powerful standardized vehicles for the Wehrmacht, followed by amateur floating chassis vehicles. In 1938, MAN introduced its revolutionary 120 horsepower truck with 8 single-drive wheels. To prove the inexhaustible possibilities of multi-axle vehicles in 1940 to 1941, 2 such vehicles were converted into amphibians with wheel arrangement 8x8. The unique vehicles were equipped with open displacement hulls with 150 horsepower diesel engine, transmission with PTO gearboxes for 2, propellers, 2 drum winches with a total pulling force of 40 tons, rigid decking on the upper surface of the body and chains on the wheels. The title photo shows a late production German military amphibian SSG-6A41, preserved in the French Museum of Armoured Vehicles in Sommer. Authentic black and white illustrations are used in the article. Full-scale color photos are made by the author. In conclusion, amphibious warfare during World War II showcased some of the most innovative and lesser-known floating vehicles that played crucial roles in various campaigns. From the versatile landing craft to the unique amphibious tanks, these machines were designed to bridge the gap between land and sea, enabling forces to launch surprise assaults and secure vital beachheads. As we reflect on these remarkable advancements, it becomes clear that the ingenuity of wartime engineering not only shaped the outcomes of battles but also laid the groundwork for modern amphibious operations. Understanding these vehicles helps us appreciate the complexities of military strategy and the relentless pursuit of innovation in the face of adversity. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of amphibious warfare's hidden history.